talked about mechanisms and so on. I don't want to go into detail. There's no arbitration curbs or accountability, not even the CBMs. On the ground, what is happening now? In language, we heard what Bush said, but on the ground, Israel expanded settlements and gave out building permits for more, especially in and around Jerusalem, Ma'ale Adumim, Jabal Abu Ghneim, that would bisect the West Bank and surround and isolate Jerusalem, and Ras al-Amud inside Jerusalem, and Silwan. And of course, as you know, Olmert, standing right next to Bush, talked about how the cessation of settlement activities does not apply to settlements in and around Jerusalem and to major population centers, which means the big settlements. So what does it apply to? The outposts, 2 or 3 people in each? Anyway. And of course, there was a dangerous and vicious escalation of violence, particularly in Gaza, where you saw 40 people killed in 48 hours, the shelling, civilians in their homes, in their cars. And of course, in the West Bank, in Nablus and other cities. And they undermined the Prime Minister's attempts to impose or to create some kind of rule of law and public order in the West Bank. They tightened the isolation of Gaza. 80 patients died because they couldn't have access to treatment, patients with chronic diseases. And they cut off fuel, food, medicine, and power supplies. And it's something we kept saying, you know, the wall cannot hold back, walls cannot hold back, really, starving people. Walls cannot hold back people who are bent on freedom either. So they found a way around the wall. They blew up the walls. They went to Egypt this time. But they continued, but Israel continues to think, and I'll talk about the ramifications there, that it can now, with the Herzliya conference, even redefine the whole region. They're trying to redraw the map of the whole region, not just isolate Gaza and the West Bank. Now, politically, tomorrow, the Vinograd report will come out. On the 30th. And this will determine the future of Olmert. There are voices calling for his resignation. Most of the political decisions taken in Israel now are based on Olmert staying in power, whether he will avoid resignation, whether Barak will, or Labour will come to an agreement whereby Kadima will replace Olmert with Tzipi Livni or somebody else, whether they will continue a coalition with Shas, whether they will drop Jerusalem in negotiations in order to keep Shas in the government. I don't have time to go into all that, but let's say that now we are back as a subject to Israeli domestic politics and self-interest, back to the language of no partner. There is no trust. And even in Israel, they're talking about the Palestinians being an existential threat to Israel. Negotiations have not proceeded on permanent status issues, only on settlements. And I said before, you do not negotiate settlements. Settlements have to be removed. On settlements and measures, public opinion in Palestine has become more traumatized, more hostile, and they lost any faith or confidence in the peace process or in the other side. And the Palestinian people, I'm telling you, are getting fed up with their own leadership, very honestly, on both sides, whether it's Fatah or Hamas. But at the same time, this violence weakens only the moderates. There is a proposal on the crossing points that Mahmoud Abbas and Salam Fayyad suggested to Egypt and to Israel. It was refused. I think it is time that they start considering this, because this is one way in which we can reunify the West Bank and Gaza. Now, I will conclude by saying that, ironically, while people are talking globally, there is a consensus. I read an article saying, no, there is no consensus. But there is a consensus on the two-state solution. On the ground, this option is disappearing. It is disappearing, not just with the settlements and so on, but with the division between Gaza and the West Bank. Instead of healing the rift between Gaza and the West Bank, but with the blockade, the sanctions, and Israel's attempt at abrogating responsibility as a belligerent occupant, forcing links of dependency on Egypt, ending the territorial contiguity within Palestine, but also trying to destroy political and national cohesion, thereby destroying the possibility of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state. Add to that the settlements and the wall and the checkpoints in the West Bank, and we see the transformation of the Palestinian question again from a question of national self-determination to Gaza, Egypt, West Bank, Jordan protectorates and dependencies. This is what Israel wants, which is not going to happen. But with Israel annexing maximum territory or geography with minimum demography. Or another option would be maintaining the population centers in the West Bank as isolated Bantustans under Israeli control. And you can call this a statelet or a mini-state or a city-state or a series of city-states, I don't know. But Israel is generally moving in that direction, but maneuvering in order to maintain control, to buy time to create facts on the ground. Both these are recipes for disaster, for perpetuation of oppression, violence, extremism, and injustice. Now, anybody who has any sense, and Israel should have known this by now, the Palestinian people cannot be beaten into submission or coerced into capitulation. The spirit and will of a people bent on getting freedom and dignity cannot be broken. Only walls, sieges, and blockades can be broken. Justice and peace, or a just peace, are the true paths to the liberation of both occupier and occupied, and to the stability of the region as a whole. Thank you for your patience.